Hello, everyone, and welcome to Black in the Berg's virtual conversation on poets, poetry, and finding your voice. My name is Leslie King. I'm the founder of Black in the Berg. I am so glad that you could join us. So I'm going to ask you to like and share our video. I'm very excited about our conversation today. So please like and share. And I'm going to introduce my co host for today, which is Teresa Harris. Some of you may know her. Teresa is a poet in her own right, and she's also a playwright. So I'm so glad you could be with me today, Teresa.
Excited?
Yeah, so how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Just trying to stay safe, trying to stay sane.
All right, same here. I hope everyone out there is staying safe and sane as well. Well, what I want to do is introduce our special poet guest today. Some of you know our guest. And let's start off. Our first guest is Angelina Dawn. Angelina's in the house. So
Hi.
welcome, Angelina. And then our next special guest, I'm sure you know this person, Nick George, poet
Good
extraordinaire
evening.
and founder of The Listening. And then our next guest is Nakesha Moore. Nakesha, poet, activist, writer. And so I'm so glad that you could be with us today. And it looks like we also have our other guest in the house with us, Nikos Hawkins, who's
Hey, what's up, y'all? What's going on?
so we have a wonderful show and conversation for you. I'm very excited. And actually, this conversation was the idea of Nick because um, during one of our previous conversations, I asked, our audience if they had any thoughts about show topics or anything they wanted to discuss. And Nick said, "What about one on poetry or poet?" So I was like, "Cool, let's make it happen." So here we are. So why don't we go ahead and get started? And Teresa, you want to take it away?
Sure. As I said, really excited to have an opportunity to talk to and listen to these phenomenal poets and spoken word artists. I'm familiar with most of your work, and it's phenomenal. But I know myself as a poet and writer, I started late in life. I found my passion. But I'm wondering for you, how did you get started? And this is for everyone. How did you get started writing poetry? What inspired you?
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in. My journey with poetry almost didn't happen. A guidance counselor, when I was in elementary school, suggested it to me. I was having that typical rough time in elementary school and middle school, and he simply suggested I check out Maya Angelou. I'd never heard of Angelou. Angelou sounded like a weird last name to me, but I checked it out and it felt like it made sense. It felt like it was someone speaking in my language. So I think that was where it began. My interest in poetry began, and I didn't really begin writing aggressively till high school because by that point I had a lot to say.
Thank you. Nikesha? Nikesha, can you hear me? Can How about the others? Are you able, Angelina, can you hear me?
Yeah, so I think my journey started, I started writing when I was in elementary school. I did like short stories and things of that nature, but I started to need an outlet to let go of a lot of anger. In my high school years, my principal actually made me take an entire period out of class just to write, to keep me out of trouble. And that's when it started. And then I did a lot of plays and inserted my poetry in it. And then when I got to college, I did a lot of the spoken word segment, and that's basically where I've stayed since then.
Great. Thank you. Nikos, how did you get started? Looks like we might have some technical difficulty. Can you hear me?
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Nikos. You're up. Tell us how you got started writing.
We can hear you.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, just to reintroduce myself, my name is Nikos Hawkins. I grew up here, was born and raised here. Um, I discovered poetry. I'm gonna say probably maybe in high school. I think high school was the first time I heard about uh, Paul Laurence Dunbar because we got Dunbar Middle School. And I heard of Langston Hughes, but I only heard them during Black History Month. So I thought it was interesting, but I didn't really like dive into it. So I say maybe 3 years afterwards, I was about 21. Is on. Oh, okay. You said it's on. Oh, okay. Is this better now? Can y'all hear me a little bit better?
Yeah, it is better.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. But yeah, I was probably 21 and I got invited to First Fridays. It was off of Fifth Street. It was at the Legacy Museum. And when I did that, I didn't really know what I was walking into. I know I had a whole lot of stuff to say. My background was very interesting. And I knew as a child I had a lot of pent up anger and a lot of things. It was kind of tough for me to express. I know when I was in school, I used to always instead of paying attention in like the maths and sciences, which I should have been, I used to always like just write lines about what I was thinking. So fast forward when I got to the Legacy Museum, um, somebody invited me up. It was a lady named Dr. Kelly Beats, and she said, you know what? Even if you don't have a poem, just come up and say something. And um, I think I wrote like a half a rap or something like that. But I said it, the crowd liked it, and just that response about sharing my truth, it connected me to it. And it's probably been about 6 years now on my journey, just still kind of learning and discovering, and I've fallen in love with it. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
So was that your first? That was your first time publicly, or at the Legacy Museum? That was your first time.
Yes, man.
So what you had been writing prior to that? Is that correct?
Yeah, but it wasn't poetry. It was just kind of like thoughts and creative writing, things like that, related to more like novels and stuff.
Oh, okay. All
Hmm.
right.
Nakesha, are you able to hear us? Can you hear us, Nakesha?
Can you hear us, Nakesha? Okay, it looks like she might not be able to hear us. Um, so why don't we go ahead to our next question, just in case, um, and we'll go from there. So, how would you describe your poetry or spoken word? What words would you use to define it?
Raw and relentless.
Okay, and tell me what that means in terms of raw. Is that it?
Um,
What topics do you tend to cover?
I tend to cover a lot of relationship topics. Um, a lot of the honestly, most of the poetry that I write is derived from personal experience. So I talk a lot about relationship, a lot about love, um, a lot about family, and then world issues. A lot of activism type of poetry. And I don't hold anything back. I don't censor, because the reason why I write most of the time is to emotionally purge. And if I censor, I don't get the job done. So that's how I describe mine.
Okay. Anyone else? How would you describe your poetry?
Go ahead, Nick.
Right.
Nah, bro, I was waiting on you. I was waiting on you, man.
Hey man, look, I'm appreciative of just being here. If I had to describe mine, I don't know if I could come up with 2 words, but I think mine is a reflection of my environment or what it was, especially growing up where I was from. So
I love hearing both of you guys, and I want to echo the sentiment. I'm appreciative of sharing the space with y'all, because I feel like I could say each of those things. More than anything else, though, I feel like it's very hard and kind of jacked up to ask wordsmiths to use a limited amount of words to describe their craft. I feel like that's setting me up for failure. Uh, but I think with my poetry, I think the 2 words, if I had to pick any, would be challenging norms.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to find ways to creatively say something familiar that hasn't been heard before. And if we have this burden, this gift of language, then the responsibility falls on us to do something original, and that echoes with what everyone has said, to do something raw, to do something that represents where we come from and the habitat that fostered that creativity. I've said more than 2 words already. I'm sorry.
No, go on.
Well, actually, it's interesting. The question was really open-ended, so there wasn't a limitation on the number of words. So you're good.
Angelina, I think I heard you say something about purging. Did you say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering, when you write, and this is to all of you, when you write, and you kind of alluded to this, do you write for yourself? Is it kind of a catharsis for yourself, or do you write with an audience in mind, or with the intent of reaching or relating to an audience, or is it a combination of the 2?
I think it's hold on.
yeah, I couldn't hear Miss Teresa. I'm sorry about that.
I said, when you write, is it a way of purging, as Angelina had mentioned? Do you write for yourself, or do you write with the intent of reaching out to an audience?
So I write for both reasons, but it seems like the stuff that I write for myself, people relate to more. It's crazy because I'll write just for myself, and then when I decide to put it on my podcast or share it on my newsfeed or share it within my private tribe, that is the stuff that gets people thinking and that challenges their norms. But I write for both, and I do. And then I pray about the things that I share, because I know I'm careful about what I share because the stuff is so personal. But sometimes I have to. Sometimes I have to for myself, and sometimes I have to for others. So it's a combination of both.
What kind of feedback do you get?
So I remember, just to be just totally transparent, I posted a poem about my recent trials of going through divorce and things like that. And I got a lot of inboxes from women saying not just how brave I was, but how it felt good to have someone who understood what they were trying to say, but they couldn't say it, or made them feel like someone understood what they were going through.
Yeah.
Or just a certain perspective that they thought they were probably lost. A lot of people just weren't there. That's why I do it. I do it because I believe there's healing in communion. I believe that when people come together and talk about things, there's healing. And I love to use art to do so.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think there's something about people realizing that they're not the only ones out there going through certain experiences. Yeah. Nicholas.
It's weird. I grew up wanting to keep it all to myself, thinking that nobody would care, nobody wanted to hear from me, and I kind of ran with that until an unnecessary amount of people began to doubt whether I had anything to say at all. So that I kind of took that as a challenge, like, oh, really? Oh, all right, I got something for you. But I think that when looking at the two, whether I write for myself or others, I think it exists on a spectrum. I think that it operates in ways where similar to our interactions with other people. We move how we identify, we move how we feel, but we don't always see that the way we move can impact other people. Like Angelina was just saying, our own personal journeys can actually influence or support or help or influence somebody else. So I don't think the two are necessarily exclusive. It's just kind of a pendulum from personal to private. I'm not even sure if that makes sense. I just know that whenever I'm going through the process, it's never ignoring one of the other side, because if I'm not speaking for myself and to myself, there's not enough truth that's getting through. But if it leads in the other way, then whatever lessons that may be there can't be heard by anybody else.
Okay. Nikos, can you hear me?
Yeah, Miss Leslie, could you repeat the question for me, please?
Sure. So I think if I understand the question that Teresa was asking, are you writing? Who is your audience? Who are you writing for? When you write, do you think about who you're writing for, or are you writing for yourself? Is it, and then you're just conveying your experiences. So do you think about your audience in the process of creating and writing?
Man, that's a good question. I know sometimes for certain subjects, I definitely think about my audience. But I think for the most part, just me personally, I try to write for, I guess, the demographic that I represent, which would be like the lit kids that grew up in these urban environments, that didn't have outlets, that really didn't know how to express themselves.
Yeah.
And I think also too that when I write, I write for that little kid that's still in me. In certain parts, I feel like also too that just communication is confession almost too. So whether I'm writing for myself or if it's a certain subject that's for other people, I feel like I can transcribe um, the miseries, the victories, the trials, the tribulations, the come ups, the setbacks. I feel like God gave me that ability to do that for people. Yeah, that's it.
It's really cool that you said that, Nikos. I think that's a quote from boy, I can't believe I'm getting his name. James Baldwin. I think he said that quote, that all art is a kind of a confession. Which is dope to consider the kind of capacity that artists have to to really be able to reflect and confess, not just for themselves, but their community, their people, their tribe. Anyway, I thought that was dope. I don't know if you knew that, but that comes from James Baldwin.
I ain't know that, bro. You put me on. Yeah.
Great
I
minds.
think what's also cool too, man, is like I like to consider myself somebody that's like, I try to keep it 1,000 all the time, like no matter how hard the truth is. But I know a lot of stuff I probably wouldn't say to somebody unless it was like my close rounds that I've boldly said on stage in front of strangers before in a piece. And I'm like, man, that's like a whole different space of intimacy right there. Like you might have some stuff that you don't even talk to your family about, but it's like when you craft it and you get to control the delivery, you get to, well, I'm gonna stress this line, and this line is unstressed just to get me here. And I feel like all of that it plays into like who your audience is, because I think another thing too is you have to be honest with yourself about who you are writing for. I feel like when you perform your inner character, your like inner mask, it shows itself. And you know, I feel like the people will know if you being honest up there.
Yeah, so that's raises an interesting point. And I want to just note that Nakesha is having some difficulty getting on. So that means we might have to do a show with her later because of that. But I just want to recognize that she's having some technical difficulty. And I know that she does want to engage and share. But, so it leads me to kind of the idea behind the title of our the conversation, and that's poets, poetry, and finding your voice. So I'm curious about how you have the place of, connecting your voice with your experiences, and is it something in your journey of writing you think that you continually learn how to find your voice, and in finding your voice, how has that impacted you personally, right? Because art is not just something for the people who receive it, it's for the people who are consuming it or engaging with it. But how has it transformed your own life, right? So that's why I have the bird and the pen alluding to Maya Angelou. And so I'm curious about how you have been able to find your voice, how it's impacted you. And I think we heard a little bit about, Angelina, how it impacts those that hear your perspective, you're writing through your poetry. So, I mean, that's a lot. So any part of that question you want to respond to, feel free to. So let's go with Angelina since you just finished, okay?
I think that I'm able to find my own voice through it, because I get the confidence. When I used to write, but not write like the truthful side of things, I wasn't a very confident person, if that makes sense. I was still hidden. I was still closed in. I was still in a shell. I started to uncover truth and started to heal. My writing changed. It became more truthful. It became more relatable. And the more that I write, the more that I find out about my personal self, my inner self. Things that I need to change, things I want to keep, things that I want to do. So literally, it's like a cycle. Like if I write the truth, I find the truth. So that's just part of it for me.
Okay.
Angelina, what was that turning point for you that helped you get from one side to the other?
Give me 1 second. Pain. Pain.
All right, baby, we have to come back to her.
Yeah.
I understand that parenting life. I got this 2-year-old right now that's threatening to jump on me. But while she's definitely handling that, just to answer the original question, how honest are we being?
Well, it's up to you. I mean, you can be as honest as you want to be. This is, bring it.
um, recently, I did an event with the Academy, and I think um, there was that was the week of the election, and I sent them a message. I was like, "Hey guys, I don't want to get you in trouble because I don't want to come with a certain type of all of the anxiety that I was feeling in the moment. I didn't want that to color their program in a negative way. I didn't want it to impact their fundraising that they were trying to do. And they gave me the parameters, and it was from there that I saw that I was able to be honest, because there's no way you can engage in this without being completely 100% honest with yourself. Um, Spoken word is very dramatic, but one thing that separates it from theater is that there are no barriers to your real life. So if you try to put any up, you will be able to identify, hey, that's not exactly what I want to sound like. That's not exactly who I am. Spoken word kind of demand that you bring all of yourself to the table, and the more you're able to like remove those boundaries and barriers out of the way, um, I don't know. That's something I've noticed personally. That might sound weird or different, but being that open, yeah, yeah.
So it's the desire is to be open and be authentic as a spoken word artist, but realizing that in certain contexts there are challenges, or there can be challenges or limitations.
There,
Uh,
there can be. There can be. The bravest of us go at it a hard body no matter what.
mhm.
And it takes time. It takes time to get that nerve and to be
Straight
that
up.
brave.
Yeah, it does.
Um,
It takes a
for the
lot.
it takes a lot.
Yeah,
For the longest time, I
already.
didn't want to publicly, like I would write it for myself. I didn't want to publicly acknowledge my blackness in my poetry whenever performing it because I thought that it might keep me from being able to perform in front of certain crowds. But the older I've gotten, the less F's I have. So the more nerve, I guess, I was able to bring to it. Not regardless. I don't want to say regardless because a true professional is aware of who they're talking to. But hold that truth in the same hand as the truth you're trying to present.
Mhm. Okay. Nikos, did you have anything you wanted to add to that about um, finding your voice, the power of that, and your journey to finding your voice? I mean, I think you
Yeah,
talked about it a little bit, right, with the your first time
yeah,
going out and sharing. But anything else you want to share?
yeah. Yeah. I'll keep it short because Nick was hitting off this, but I'm still finding my voice. Like when it comes to the structure, your delivery, like what are you actually saying, right? I feel like you can. There's always room for improvement, but I'm still on this journey. I'm learning each and every day. I think what's unique to my walk is that I learned uh, the technique and the skill set before I learned the history of poetry. So I'm having to like play catch up just by doing research on like our ancestors and how they used to bang with it. So I love reading who was I just recently looking at? I was looking at W.E.B. Du Bois, like the Tale of Two Souls, like about like the double consciousness and things like that. Like that wasn't poetry, but to me it was because it was like he had a message, and it was curtailed for a certain audience, or like even other religious leaders like Elijah Farrakhan's How to Eat to Live, like that stuff is poetry. It's not just a reflection of your environment, but it's also like a time stamp for like where we are today. Like I can't imagine 100 years from now when they go back and catalog everything that just happened in 2020. Like that's
2020,
gonna be crazy.
like so much.
Yeah.
Man, what?
So loud. So loud.
Yeah, crazy. But Yeah, I ain't mean to digress, but yeah, I'm still learning. I'm still learning to find my voice, and the more research I do, the easier it is to identify what I sound like in a crowd. So,
Okay, that's real. We're all still on a journey. And whatever art you're involved with or engaged with, because our who we are is ever evolving, and sometimes it changes parts
yeah,
of who we are. So figuring out that piece. Teresa, did you have a question?
Yeah, Nikos was talking about technique and different structures and things like that. And all of you mentioned about growing as a spoken word artist. I'm curious as to what advice would you give someone who wants to do this?
Man, I don't. Is there a right way? I
Can
mean,
I add something to that, Nick, before you
yeah,
answer?
yeah.
I'm
Please do.
curious about answering that question in terms of the totality of who you are, right? You talked about you being Black, right? And also your other identities, being a man or, being a Black man involved and engaged in poetry. But maybe there are other parts of who you are that you want to speak to as well. But I want to invite you to share about that aspect as well.
Yeah, that's a whole other question. The intersectionality and creativity. Let's save that for another episode, Leslie.
man.
Well, maybe you don't want to answer it, and somebody else might want to touch on it. Okay, I can respect that.
No, no, I would love to dig into it, but we do not have the time tonight.
Ah, I got you.
Man, we don't have enough of the people in this conversation to. Ooh, that you done started something.
Look,
Um,
messed
but
up.
in terms of the steps or the route or advice to becoming a poet, um, I mean, Nico's kind of hit it on the head with his journey and all of our journeys, and exploring it and learning it and getting more comfortable with it. I think the first step is having a certain knowledge of self. Like I mentioned before, this is not something you can get into trying to be like somebody. You have to really invest in exploring the knowledge of self, all of the things, all of the good, all of the bad, because poetry isn't about sounding pretty or cute all the time. um, I will say that right next to that, you can't put out what you don't have within you. And that's from like a research standpoint. If you're not reading, if you're not indulging in the history, and oh man, Nikos, I'm stealing all your words tonight, but all the ancestors of this incredible like literary lineage,
Mm,
to borrow that phrase from Gemini. If you don't have that desire to kind of say, well, what did they do with these words, and how did they handle this situation? What did Du
yeah,
Bois say about this? How about Audre Lorde? What did so and so and such? You got to be willing to put the time in to see what people have done with the language that we share, not for the risk of like biting or whatever. That's always a risk anytime you're creative, but there's ways to sound like you when you know all of what's around you.
I think that's great
mm, yeah,
input for budding artists, budding spoken word artists, letting them know you got to get in there, you got to educate yourself, you got to read, so you got to be aware. That's great information. Um, Angelina,
I think I'm gonna piggyback off Nick a little bit because saying about being aware. And I was thinking about like self-awareness yesterday. Um, what I would say to someone and what I had said to someone is if you have a particular audience, you have to know that audience. You have to know what affects them. You have to know where they're at. You have to be aware. If you want to be a poet and be a writer towards social issues, you need to know exactly what is going on. Um, and then you need to be truthful with yourself. Like Nick was saying, like you can't do this trying to be like somebody else. You're going to get frustrated and fail every single time you try to mimic. We use art because we're inspired by it, but we don't need to mimic it. we need to make it our own. So anytime that you feel as if that you want to go out there, you want to perform, you want people to hear what you wrote, then write what's real to you. Write from your perspective, because someone will always have some way to relate to it. Always. And then don't be afraid. Just do it.
You know, I appreciate what you were saying, Angelina. It sounds like it's this tension of learning and the self knowledge that Nick talked about, and yet not letting the lack of full understanding of self hinder you from writing anyway. I mean, because there's learning in that tension, right? So there's learning in that place of growth that resonates with others who hear it.
It's
Even if, go ahead.
It's definitely that in between. Like, so much happens in the in between, that where I'm at and where I want to be, there's so much cultivation that presents itself there. You grow so much in that in between. And I would tell someone, don't stop just because you feel like you're not where you want to be. Some of my best pieces have been written in a place I didn't know where I was. Some of my best stuff where I didn't know who I was, where I didn't know where I was. That's where some of my best pieces were written. And another thing I can say about Nick and Nikos, they're very aware about social issues. They're very aware about who they are. And it's sometimes you feel like if they feel as if they're just like, I don't know what's going on, but they still express themselves. They still pill themselves for an audience. And so that's one thing that I can respect about them too, as poets. Like, they still do it. Even like, I've seen Nick go up there, if somebody made him just like, he just went right for it. Or like Nikos, like, you got this big guy, but like he kind of gentle, because he's real about it. And that's the biggest thing, is just being raw and being brave.
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that.
It requires a level of vulnerability, and then I'll let you get to Nikos, right? So this sharing of ourselves, it requires vulnerability. When you step on stage, you're leaving, when you've left a piece of yourself, right? When you have really authentically given of yourself from this work. And so for a spoken word artist, it's not just the written word, right? There's this other piece of engaging with the audience that's a little different. But anyway, go ahead, Teresa.
Oh, I was just going to ask, do you ever, with your awareness, and as you say, you're growing even as you're writing a piece or you're evolving, do you ever go back and rewrite a piece of work that you've done? No?
I've personally never done it. Because I don't think I've ever thought to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I've just never done it, because like, I am an emotional writer. I usually write in the middle of an emotion. If it's a topic though, like if someone says like, I've been hired to do topic pieces, then yeah, I would do that. But if it's something just like myself, I've never done it.
Nicholas?
I've gone over pieces prior to a performance to maybe update it, or I might have something I'm getting ready to do and like in the middle of performing it, edit it along the way. I think that's something I would also, kind of to interject that into the question you asked earlier about advice for those who want to be spoken word artists, is to not be afraid of growing, to kind of lean into that process. Like, it is a process, especially in spoken word. It's a very public process. Oftentimes when writing prose, it's in our notebook. We live in our notebook and we leave it there. When you venture into spoken word, you have to add that performative element to it. Don't be afraid of growing, because that is definitely a piece of it. I really want to hear Nikos' advice, because I've been able to like witness this brother do a lot of amazing stuff.
Hey man, that's peace and blessings, brother. I appreciate that, man. I kind of got like this where like a lot of people don't know, like I'm a perfectionist, so I've I won't say like completely rewritten a piece, but I won't put it out until I feel like, okay, I've said everything, or if I didn't hit like I wanted to with like maybe my closest friends or something like that, or somebody has like a small suggestion, I like run back to the lab and do that. But on the flip side, prayerfully, I'm not afraid to like mess up. I'm not afraid to learn in front of people. And I think I only developed that, I guess, a skill, if you want to call it that, as I became a man. Because I keep thinking about like if I want to go and reach a higher height than where I'm at, like I'm gonna have to take the failures. They always say, shoot your shot. Yeah, that's cool, but the other side is if you got the ball, either you dribbling or you gonna pass it to somebody else. And you know, to keep it a complete band, black folk don't get a whole lot of chances to pull from the 3-point line, for real. And so that's why I'm saying, like, you gotta come with it. I'm just keeping it a band. But advice that I would give to someone else who was trying to start getting into spoken word poetry, man, it sounds cliche, but you really have to have knowledge yourself. Like it's so important. And you know, Dave Chappelle said this quote, and I always hear it anytime I'm in the creative process. He said, everything before you is obsolete, and everything after you bears your mark. So even if you don't know where to start from, there's enough information. It's a whole lot of artists out here that you can like pull from, where you know that you have a platform to build your house, but your house is not gonna look like everybody else's. You know what I'm saying? You might not even have doors on it when you first start, but the point is to start from somewhere. You know what I'm saying? You got the ball, take the shot. Even if you miss, you got to keep on shooting. You got to keep on playing. So that's the advice that I would give to somebody else. And I just started this off the top of the dome too. It's like the vulnerability it takes to get on stage in front of somebody and to tell them some stuff that's like I don't even know you. I don't know y'all, and I'm telling you my truth. Like I'm making my autobiography enjoyable. The good, the bad, the ugly. And regardless of what the response is, I have to stand up there almost naked and just accept it. That's the release. They say art is about a product connecting with something. It didn't say that it had to be a good product, and it didn't say that the person connecting with it was going to accept it. But you have to be ready, win, lose, or draw. You got to be like the postman. You got to deliver this mail, the rain, sleet, or snow. You gotta come with it. But take small steps and knowledge yourself.
Um, if I may, Nikos, you said something about it being a product. And, I think that, and you may believe this too, your art is it's a piece of you, right? I mean, it's a reflection of you. And it can become like a product. I mean, I know what you mean, right? But in so many ways, the art it's a reflection of you and who you are, as much as it is a product. But I want to go back to something, if I may, Teresa. You talked about the advice you were giving to people about starting where you are. So I wonder if there was anyone in your life. So this is a two-part. If there's someone in your life that encouraged your writing, or and what poet inspires you the most? Who are your favorite poets? So was there anyone who kind of encouraged you in your writing? Maybe they didn't encourage you in specifically around your writing, but seeing them help to inspire you in your craft?
I need to
Anyone
get a
can.
paper. I need to write this list out because there's a gang of amazing artists that I'm going to come up with. So I'm gonna just write this down while somebody else goes because it's a lot of them.
Okay, how about three? Can you name three?
3.
With the understanding that there are many more that you admire or are your favorites.
Jasmine
Email,
Man.
email me that list when you finish, bro. Straight up.
I'm gonna start off with Jasmine Mans, just because she's from my hometown of Newark, New Jersey. Shout out to Hooterville. But yeah, she is a beast on the microphone, an amazing microphone holder. Um, Gil Scott Heron
Mm.
for how he was able to marry language and theater and music at that time, and how it laid the groundwork for what we call hip hop today.
Mm.
And I think I'll just say her because I recently gotten back in touch with some of her work. Dominique Christina, who
Mm.
is easily um, like one of the this new school of poets, one of the strongest forces to be reckoned with. Um, she has an amazing body of work, and she does great work all over the place. But that's just within the spoken word category. Just as far as like those who inspire me, there's a lot of amazing writers um, that exist out there. But I mean, I feel like that source of inspiration comes from beyond poetry and beyond spoken word. You know, anybody from Anderson Paak to Meg The Stallion. You know, believe it or not, like a lot of it kind of enforces art. Period. Like it's not just limited to poetry; it just enforces that. So I think I've said enough.
Okay. Anyone else?
Y'all hear me?
Angelina,
Can you hear me?
we got you. I
Oh,
can hear
oh,
you.
cool, cool. Man, you know what? I honestly don't know that many poets. Um, but I will say, I'll add Alicia Harris. Um, she like mastered the English language. It's crazy. Like it's ridiculous. And she hits every time she talks about love or the heartbreak that comes from it, and in the midst of all of that you still get to see her walk with God. um I gotta throw Jay-Z on there, Young Carter, Jovito, gotta put him in there, man. What he does in 2 lines is almost like novel worthy. It's ridiculous. And man, let me see. Number 3, I'll probably put Black Thought in there too. Like, yeah, bro. Hey, bro. Look, you already know.
I already know.
It's ridiculous. I ain't saying nothing else. That's it, man.
Okay. Angelina, did you have anyone?
Of course, Jasmine Mans. She's fire. Gabriel Ramirez. His ability to translate from the black man perspective, the black boy perspective, is heavy for me, especially being a woman raising 2 black boys. Um, and then I have to go, since we've doing some music artists, I gotta go with Nipsey. Rest in peace. I have to go with Nipsey. His love for community, and just how raw and how transparent he was,
Yeah.
inspires me to be the same. So yeah, that's my 3.
Yeah, rest in peace to the GOAT, yeah.
Definitely.
Teresa?
My next question is since you guys are putting everything out there, You're having to be raw. You're having to get naked. What have you found to be one of the biggest challenges that you've had to face as an artist, or obstacle?
When it gets too real, I think that for me, reflecting around us, I think that we can use it as ammunition. But I think the biggest challenge for me has been recognizing that some stuff you just can't put a poem behind it. Like you can't write it out. You can't rhyme it out. You can't. That's ironically the last piece I performed, saying that, there's challenges sometimes that supersede what you can make out of it. It's just the reality of a situation. That's probably been my biggest challenge. Less about the audience, less about the stage, and just more about real life taking place in the moment.
And how do you deal with it?
How
do you overcome it?
Like, you mean like how do I just like move past that, or just?
Yeah.
I think that switches gears then, because once I reach at that point, a decision has to be made. Do I take my awareness of all of this and still make something out of it? Or do I throw up a white flag and say, hey, yo, I need, let me divest my efforts somewhere else. Everything can't just be fixed with like throwing your headphones on. Let me get my pen and write this out, because some things are bigger than that. And that's okay, because artistry is one piece of our identity. Creating things is just a piece of our identity. If I'm worried about a riot on 5th Street and if I'm going to get in trouble on my way home, that's more important than me writing a poem at the moment. That supersedes that. So let me get home. Let me make sure the door is locked behind me, and then we can get to creating, if that's what I do with it. But I think in recognizing that challenge, I have to determine what's more important in the moment: getting back to my babies or putting down 16 bars.
Yeah,
That's real.
Yeah. Angelina?
I think, like Nick said, aside from the audience, my battle with my inner self, I have found myself in a place where I keep writing the same thing. And it's not because I was tired of the theme, I was tired of living in that theme. I was tired of living in that theme. And I think that might have been my biggest challenge was, Angelina, you got to write something different. You got to get out of this, because you're literally writing and you're literally experience different, so you can write different. And I found myself in a place where it got pretty dark for me. And the only way I could break through was realizing that I can write myself out of it. And it sounds weird, but I think that was my biggest challenge, was how to do that. And how to do that in such a way where it just wasn't temporary. Like, how can I express myself where I am, out of this dark place, into a better place, and it's real. And it really is my reality. So I think that's what it is. And a lot of times, if I am stuck inside of a cycle like that, I do something else creatively that I normally don't do, and it helps. But sometimes when it doesn't help, sometimes I have to just pull back. I seclude and I breathe.
As a woman,
Yeah, I feel that.
have you
I know for me,
encountered?
one of the challenges that I face, actually, for the most part, like 90% of it is all mental. I like to pull from a lot of real things that I may or may not have fully healed from, but I have to be at a certain place where I got like a calmness so that I can, articulate it responsibly, so that I'm not just spilling it out and like bleeding on everybody when I go to present a piece. Like, there's been a lot of times where I've recited stuff that, that should have just been a talk between two people. But I had to get it out for me. I had to confess that off me. I had to get that demon up off me. And then it's been times where it's like, hey, bro, the piece is done. Go ahead and start the memorization process. And I'm like, nah, because when I said it over here to these 20 people, 19 was feeling it. Old boy in the back, he won't. So I got to go back. I got to get him too. So yeah,
That's
for
so
real.
real.
And it'll bug me, man. Like I'm the person that's like, man, if we doing something fun and somebody's not having a good time, I take that personally. I'm like, yo, what can we do to cater to you? Or poetry wise, what can I do to fit you in this world that I'm designing so that you can look at this and at least minimum your takeaway is I had a good time tonight. And maximum is, man, I might put this gun down. Or you know what? I could be on this block hustling right now. I'm not gonna do that. I'm a play with my kids in the park. Or it could even be I'm gonna pick the phone up and call my mom. Something is a takeaway from that, and I aim for that, but that's it's always mental for me. For the most part, I feel like I can weather any physical storm that comes my way, but I need the extra help from the Most High to navigate through the mental stuff.
All right. Well, we are almost coming to the end of our time, but I want to ask you the last question. Well, let's see. This is the last question. So, what does the power of the pen mean to you? What does the power of the pen mean to you? And anybody, I guess Nick, since Angelina, I'm not sure if she's there. Oh, well, let's go with Angelina first then. What does the power of the pen mean to you?
The power of the pen. Life. That's the only word I have for it is life. Um, being able to survive it, being able to translate it, and being able to live it.
Okay. Anyone else? Nick?
Yeah, I'm gonna alley to Nikos. I need to think on this for a second.
Man, I was gonna say that's a good question, yo.
Because there's like so many like different directions to take it, especially like as it relates to how you use it. You know,
Yeah.
some of us, who are lucky enough, remember that feeling when you got a note from somebody in class like "I like you," and that pen did something different. That joint hit different at 11 years old. Um, some of us is your boss's pen writing the name on the check. That is a powerful pen. Thank you very much. Um, so I think that it's as many things. It's a tool, but the power is in its intent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was
So,
gonna say that
for
too,
you,
man.
and just to follow up with Nicholas, but for you, what does it mean? It, I appreciate, it has multiple meanings depending on the context, right?
Mm.
Are you able to share maybe one aspect of what it means to you?
It's a responsibility.
Okay,
It's
that's real.
a major responsibility not to be taken lightly. I'm watching these comments and I appreciate seeing some familiar faces. This is I don't know who she is. Brit. She goes by Brit, but she sounds mad cute. I'm gonna try to holler at her later. But no,
True.
like, yeah, there's a lot of ways that I've witnessed it, but it's a responsibility that is most intimidating, honestly. Because if I'm reckless with this, if I'm reckless with what I put down, and then not just what I put down, but how I bring it to the mic. If I'm reckless, best case scenario, nobody cares.
Mm.
Worst case scenario, somebody has like a reason to go out and break something.
Right.
Like if
Yeah.
mishandled, it can go left quickly.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And I was gonna basically say the same thing you said, man. I always, to me, it's either am I gonna build or am I gonna destroy? And it's like, it's times where I have to find that middle ground, and it's like, the power of the pen is at least let's have a conversation about this. So it is definitely about its intent, but personally, the power of the pen is, I guess, what you plan on doing with vulnerability.
Mm. Okay. So for you, the pen, it's a vulnerability. It acts as it helps you to be vulnerable.
Yeah,
That way.
and more so like everybody has their own personal armor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the pen a helmet that accommodates the rest of the breastplate and stuff, or is it a sword? Because a sword was only created for one thing. A gun was only created for one thing. Its intent depends on the user, but you still have the option. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right. Yeah. So you all have pointed out the intent, and then we've talked about our identities and our journey. And I wonder, I don't know, Teresa, did you have a follow up question? Because we're almost at our end of our time. I also want to, if anyone wants to share a piece, they certainly can. There's no pressure. Um, I know it's nice not to always have to, um, perform or share, but I wanted to also open up the opportunity for that too.
The other thing
Uh,
I wanted to say is it's been a very enlightening conversation. I really learned a lot, and uh, it's been very enjoyable. I would love to hear somebody do a piece, though.
Oh man. Go ahead, Nikos.
Uh, Tell me what she said, bro. I couldn't
Oh,
hear.
she said it's your turn to spit. Go ahead.
I got you. I'm gonna have to cut the camera off, but I'll lay some for you.
all right, so we're gonna go ahead and spotlight you. And well, hold up. Let me see if Nick, did you have any lasting thoughts before we give Nikos the opportunity to share?
This has been an amazing conversation. I'm sure, like Leslie and Teresa, you guys know that a lot of my interest in the past years has been, seeing the local poetry and spoken word community grow and expand. So, I'm glad that this conversation took place. Just looking over at the comments again, I saw Kay Amanda Brown had a question because she has an 11-year-old, who has a lot of stuff pent up. So shout out once again to the comments. I appreciate y'all for engaging with us in this way, and just wondering how to, encourage her at 11 years old. Also, that's like a really awkward stage to begin with. Like, how do you do something with what you're writing? How do you build that thing up? Um, I'm gonna echo what Dory said. Our program,
Yeah.
I'm a part of an organization called The Listening, and we have a summer program that encourages young people to consider literature and art as a way to pursue hope, education, and action. Check out our website at welcometothelistening.org. We just got it done, so I'm all about showing it off. Um, but yeah, definitely catch us up over there because we're coming back this summer, Freedom School 2021. We just finished fundraising for it. We just got approved by our national partners at the Children's Defense Fund, so we're excited, and we really want to make sure we get these young people a part of this program. It's been a wild school year, and we believe that this program can won't fix everything. It's not going to solve every problem, but it should definitely be more part of the conversation in serving our community.
All right, and so I put the listening's website in the chat if you want to connect with him uh, or the Freedom School. Feel free to contact him so we can increase more young people in our area engaging in poetry and art. And so I want to thank you, Nick, for being here. Angelina had to leave early, and unfortunately, Nakesha could not, due to technical difficulties, join us. But we will contact her to do something special with Nakesha. So I want to go ahead and give Nikos an opportunity to share a piece.
I think
So
Nikos might be having some technical difficulty as
I,
well.
Nikos,
Hey
Yeah.
y'all,
I think.
I'm trying to pull it up. I don't think it's gonna let me pull up while I
Okay.
got this open in my browser. I'm on my
Well,
phone.
we'll bring you back. We'll
Okay.
bring you back. So I want to briefly thank Nick, thank Nikos, everyone for tuning in, and I'm gonna talk to Teresa just a bit here. So thanks, Teresa. We had a pretty engaging conversation. And what stood out to you most in our conversation, Teresa? I know there were a lot of quotables, and some people captured it in our comment section. I wonder if there was anything.
What stood out to me is poetry versus spoken word. Poetry to me seems a little bit safer. You can still, and maybe people may beg to differ. You may, you can express yourself, but usually it just seems like it's a safer space. Whereas spoken word is you're putting it out there, you're taking chances, you're risking maybe hitting people in a way that they don't expect to be hit, and it's just it seems to be a much more vulnerable uh, piece of artistic expression.
Mm, yeah, it certainly, and we didn't really touch a lot on, delving into that maybe next time, but I heard that as well. And I really heard about knowing self. And maybe we can, bring Nakesha into that conversation when we, bring her back for more digging deeper into poetry. And I really I enjoy reading poetry. I like hearing it. So I appreciate the local poets putting themselves out there and sharing, really sharing who they are with us. And so I hope that our community continues to support them and that they continue to have opportunities to grow and increase their audiences and inspire others to be poets and poetry. So, yeah, so this was fun. We had the kiddos with us too. There's nothing wrong with that. They're at home. That's real. That's the
That's real.
situation,
That's what we're
right?
dealing with. Reality.
That's
Yeah.
so that's all good. The kiddos will remember mommy and daddy being on live talking about their craft. So I just want to also, just a moment, Teresa, tell people about our upcoming events and share those with you. We have we have some exciting shows. Let you know, you may not know about this, but Veronica Jackson is looking for local visual artists to potentially be a part of an exhibit about the Sedalia Center in Bedford. So she is looking for visual artists who can participate, who are interested in participating in a historical exhibit about the Sedalia Center. And she's looking for Black visual artists. So Black or African American visual artists who are in the Bedford area, region, Lynchburg, and Roanoke. So if you know someone who is interested, you can get in contact with me if you're interested, so we can share that information with her. Veronica is a local artist, and I hope to have her on the show as well. But last but certainly not least, I want to